and in order to identify shooters before they can shoot, before they can commit a
No
crime.
way.
So it was overtly calling for pre-crime. At the same time, Bill Barr legalized pre-crime by creating a Department of Justice program called DEEP that actually has arrested people for Facebook posts.
No, DEEP, deep.
It's called, yes. It's a real program, and
so,
it's still on the books.
So Bill
and
Barr,
at the same time, he was trying to eliminate encryption also, or at least get a government backdoor into devices that use encryption. And then shortly thereafter, Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner, along with a close friend of Trump, who's the former head of NBC Universal, Bob Wright, were trying to get Trump to create a new agency called HARPA, a health DARPA. And the first program of that they pitched was called Safe Homes, which is an acronym for something else. And what they wanted to do there was data mine American social media accounts, as well as extract information from Amazon Echoes, Google Home, Fitbits, and Apple Watches, and run it through AI to identify if you've been saying something that shows early signs of neuropsychiatric violence, and then based on that determine if you need to go to a court-ordered physician visit, if you need to be put under house arrest or anything, or put in preventative detention. So this is something that they were talking about back then. And even though Trump allegedly loved the idea, he didn't make HARPA. But you know who made HARPA? Joe Biden did. He called it ARPA-H, just moved the H to the end, but it's the same program, the same people. Are behind it. So this is a bipartisan agenda to try and use our online activity against us. And there needs to be awareness about it, because it's really the only way we can stop it. They have our data. They've had our data, and they've been profiling us with Palantir. They couldn't do it without Palantir. And something needs to be said and something needs to be done. And the fact that there's so many Trump supporters backing this, when they're likely, make up the bulk of the list, people that own guns and care about the Constitution and all this stuff, are going to be the people that the federal government doesn't like. And if you look at the Biden administration's framework for the war on domestic terror, which has been developed by every administration in the post 9/11 era, they make it very clear that domestic terrorists, their definition of it includes people on the left and the right, people that oppose all forms of capitalism. That includes the left's favored stakeholder capitalism, or crony capitalism, anything in that, people that are extreme environmentalists, people that oppose perceived government overreach. All of this is considered enough to get you to be considered a threat by the federal government. And this is a national security state apparatus out of control. And I would argue that with Trump and JD Vance, they are trying to sell themselves as anti-establishment, potentially libertarian and populist. And that is not what these companies are. The fact that Trump is taking money from Palantir and Palantir co-founders, whether it's Peter Thiel or Joe Lonsdale, is very alarming. And their potential influence on the vice presidential pick is also very alarming. Because if people care about reining in the surveillance state or stopping the war on domestic terror, they should be outraged by this, because ultimately what these campaigns are is a way to stifle dissent. And that's what they've been from the very beginning. When you look back at their how it started, during the Iran-Contra era, very alarming stuff. And so I think the more people know about this, the more we can do to stop it.
So this this might sound counterintuitive, but would you advise me to buy some Palantir stock?
Oh my God. Well, as far as Palantir stock go, they've done outrageously well, because they just gobble up contracts across the board. And if you look at Trump's first term, the amount of contracts the New York Times called it a bonanza for Palantir, the Trump administration. So it seems likely a second Trump administration will also maybe even be a bigger bonanza for them this time around. I don't give financial advice. I don't like Palantir. I think they're bad for freedom.
Yes, I try not to, but you can't get around it, right? But I don't invest in stock anymore. I stopped doing that. I know that's not smart, but I can't do it. So I just put my money in money markets and things, CDs, shit like that. And T-bills, ironically. But anyway, they don't tax you in California. But so just real quickly, also, the Event 201. What was Peter Thiel's connection? So if people don't know what Event 201 was, they did a mock. They pretended they were doing a mock hey, what would happen if a virus got out, and how do we handle it? They did that like 5 seconds before we had to go into lockdowns for coronavirus. And who's they that did that? Tell people who the they is.
Right. So Event 201 was hosted by the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, which previously the people that ran that, and which included one of the moderators for Event 201, or the people that did the simulation before the 2001 anthrax attacks that directly predicted what would happen just several months later. When the anthrax attacks did happen, and obviously the anthrax attacks were intended to go much farther but a lot of their plans for utilizing the aftermath of the anthrax attacks things didn't go according to plan, basically, when it got traced back to the U.S. military that the anthrax was from the U.S. military, right?
Yeah.
So Event 201 was a simulation very much like that, involving a lot of actors that benefited hugely from COVID-19 policies. And one of it's not a Peter Thiel connection, but it is a Palantir connection. So one of the longest running consultants for Palantir is a woman named Avril Haines, who was a CIA deputy director under Obama, serving under John Brennan. Avril Haines was one of, these people involved directly in the Event 201 simulation.
And she
under Biden is the top intelligence official in his administration. So the director of national intelligence. So basically the CIA's boss is her.
What's her connection to Palantir?
She's a longtime consultant for them. Okay. But as soon as she joined the Biden campaign, she tried to delete it from her biographies online.
Now, Whitney, I saw you made this tweet. You said, with Trump's vice president pick being a protege of Peter Thiel, you can kiss critical reporting from alternative media on his campaign goodbye, since Thiel funds most of the big names. Not that there was really any to begin with. So, you mean any reporting on Peter Thiel? So,
well, yeah, not a lot of reporting on Peter Thiel.
No, I don't want to flatter myself, but would you include me in that as one of the big names that Thiel funds?
Well, I don't know. Do you take money from Peter Thiel? I mean, I appreciate you having me on to talk about him and why I think he's horrible for human freedom in the United States of America.
I mean, he gave me the down payment for my house. Is that bad? No.
Oh.
No, we're on, just like, Russell Brand and Glenn Greenwald, we're on Rumble. And in order for us to come to put our videos up on Rumble, which I wouldn't have, they offered us a financial incentive to do so. So we do that. So now they incentivize us to use Rumble. I like using Rumble because, again, just like Twitter, for whatever reason, they don't police my speech and they don't demonetize my videos, and they let me say whatever I want, unlike Google, which is directly a CIA invention. So,
they're all CIA inventions.
So for whatever reason, this CIA invention allows me the freedom to say what I want.
Sure. But think about the utility of that for someone like Peter Thiel, who's developed this domestic terror spying apparatus. The problem lies in the fact that, perhaps people aren't censoring there, but they're giving them data that they can use to profile you on behalf of their intelligence, the intelligence agencies that pay them.
Yeah.
So I think that's the issue. So, I think it would clear up a lot, perhaps, if Rumble leadership talked about how they use your user data and how they prevent companies and intelligence contractors like Palantir from sucking it all up and using it to profile Americans.
Right? I mean, no matter what you do, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube for sure. No matter what you do, there's someone sucking up your data.
Yes.
Right? So there's no getting out of it.
The getting out of it is finding other platforms or finding ways to try and be as anonymous online. But unfortunately, we're being led to a world, and PayPal and some other Thiel-connected companies, and really most of big tech and the biggest banks in the country are part of this effort at the World Economic Forum called the Partnership Against Cybercrime, along with the FBI and the Secret Service and Israeli intelligence. And their goal is to have you have a digital ID in order to access the internet. To stop cybercrime and to stop hacking. And they define cybercrime as speech they don't like also.
That's right. So if you considered a cyber terrorist, if they say you're spreading misinformation, you're a terrorist. Yes. They can put you in jail with not a charge because of Barack Obama repealing habeas corpus. And all they have to do is say you're a cyber terrorist. And that means you said something online they didn't like. Now, Whitney, I've for an hour we've been sitting here being critical of Peter Thiel and Palantir and all things JD Vance and Donald Trump. Um, would you still consider me part of this group of people who isn't going to be uh, critical
Well, I don't think
reporting?
I ever said I consider you to be part of that, but there certainly are significant figures in alternative media, and I don't really want to name any names because I've been on some of their shows as well.
So you're
And
compromised.
well, I didn't mean it like that, but I just don't want to like start, a fight unnecessarily with people that have been nice to me, I guess. But I think that you know, it when you take money from someone, it can impact what you report on. And I think some people challenge that, what you have done in this case, right? And other people do not. But I think someone like Peter Thiel is hugely influential, and I think he's not talked about enough. I mean, the billionaires like him have so much money to spend on PR and to spend on buying up influencers to try and make them look like something they're not. I mean, Peter Thiel has convinced people he's a libertarian when he's given the CIA, the national security state, the most powerful weapon in its arsenal, Palantir, not to mention some of the other companies that he's helped develop, including one that he developed that he funded alongside Jeffrey Epstein, that is taking over 911 call centers all over the country, called Carbine 911. There's all this stuff happening. People need to know what Peter Thiel is actually doing, and be aware of what they're using the internet for when you interact with it, and try and take steps to mitigate it. But ultimately, I think they're trying to get us. Silicon Valley runs both political
That's
parties.
right.
They're essentially our de facto government because they've
Yes.
merged with the national security state.
Yes.
All of the big tech companies are military and intelligence contractors. It's not just Palantir, but they're a big one, and they put you on the naughty list, right? But essentially they all do it, and this is really the people that run our government, and they're leading us into a technocratic, totalitarian hellhole. And the only way to get out of it at some point is to not be dependent on their services, and they've made us dependent on their services. So I think it's high time why we can still talk freely. Um, you know, at least on some platforms, to use that to develop solutions and develop alternatives that don't involve these people, don't involve these billionaires. And it's another interesting thing too, that all of the big Silicon Valley oligarchs, every single one of them, had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Why is that? Why did Larry Page disappear when he was subpoenaed as part of the JP Morgan Epstein USBI case? Why was Sergey Brin and Elon Musk subpoenaed? Why did Jeff Bezos and Ghislaine Maxwell have such a close relationship? Why did Reid Hoffman hang out with Jeffrey Epstein all the time? Peter Thiel had meetings with Jeffrey Epstein and co-funded companies with him.
So
What's
there.
going on here?
So
Do
would
we want these people deciding our future and deciding who gets on the naughty list? I mean, it's just insane.
So when you
frankly.
say we have to become not dependent on their platforms, so if after 9/11 the government wanted all the telecommunications companies to give their data to the government, and there was one guy, I can't remember his name and I can't remember the name of the company, maybe you remember, who wouldn't do it. He was the CEO of a telecom company, and he wouldn't give the data. And what did they do to him? They put him in jail. They made him a criminal, just like they did doing to Trump, just like they're doing to Stop Cop City protesters, like they did to Lula, like they're doing to Imran Khan. If you won't go along with the game, there'll never be a platform that isn't, because if there is, they'll just criminalize that billionaire who's funding it, or whoever it is, and put them in jail, right?
Yeah, but I mean, is this the kind of society where we would just want to sit back and like vote for Trump and hope that that's going to fix everything? I mean, that's not going to solve this problem either. You know what I'm saying?
No, I
And
agree.
neither is obviously voting for the Democrat candidate, or really any. I mean, none of these candidates are going to get in the White House and magically fix everything. It's up to Americans to take individual responsibility for our lives and try and make our communities and ourselves and our families as resilient as possible for all this crazy stuff that's starting to happen, whether it's problems with the economy, another war, supply chain issues, cyber attacks, whatever. I mean, obviously things are going to get really crazy, and we need to be able to rely on each other and our communities and not rely on the government or big tech to come in and solve all our problems. Big tech wants to lead us to a world where everything we do is dependent on our digital ID and our online activity and how we've been profiled. They want us to go live in the metaverse and all of this stuff. If you don't want that world, it's time to think about what you're going to do about it.
You don't like 15.
And start thinking about alternatives.
You don't like the idea of a 15-minute city and CBDCs?
No, I don't. But again, let's keep in mind too, as far as it relates to CBDCs, that it's very possible to have programmable, surveillable money, not just issued by the central bank, but also the big Wall Street banks,
That's
which is
right.
exactly what people like Jamie Dimon have talked about
That's
doing
that's
with
right.
their JPM coin
That's
and
right.
things like that. So even though Trump has disavowed CBDCs, he
Yes.
certainly hasn't disavowed programmable, surveillable